In this segment, I'd like to describe the spellout rules a bit more and the phrase structure rules a bit more. In the previous segment, we generated nouns 1-1, and the final result was walk a man. Let's work on the phrase structure rule so that we get a man walked. We want, in English, the subject NPs precede the verb phrase. Now we don't have grammatical relations yet. The noun phrases in the semantic representations are marked for semantic roles, and this particular one, as you can see in the pop-up, is an agent. We call it most agent-like. We won't get into grammatical relations until we work in the transfer grammar, and that'll be in a subsequent segment. So let's write our phrase structure rule that will position agent NPs before the verb phrase. So we come over here to phrase structure rules. There are phrase structure rules for noun phrases, verb phrases, adjective phrases, adverb phrases, and clauses. This one will be for the clause. There's one rule that was written for us automatically by TBTA when we created our target language database, but right now it has only one constituent in it, and that's a verb phrase. So we want to say insert new constituent into rule. So we open the drop down and we're going to insert a noun phrase. And then we see the features for noun phrases, and we're going to say most agent-like. And then click OK. You haven't entered a name. Would you like to enter a name now? We can say no. So now we see noun phrase most agent-like, and it's inserted at the top. And we want our agent NPs to precede the verb phrase, so we're going to leave it there. And now we can click the initialize button, and then the generate button. And again, if you look down here, you'll see the rules being executed. So now we see a man walk. So now the constituents are in their proper order, and if we rest the cursor here, the pop-up shows us that this noun phrase was positioned by the phrase structure rule for clauses. The group name is generic, and the rule's name is generic purpose clause phrase structure rule. And you see that rule in the pop-up twice. The phrase structure rules are actually executed twice for reasons which I won't go into right now, but that's why you see it in the pop-up twice. So now let's work on selecting the past tense form for this verb. If we rest the cursor on the features, we see that the time value is discourse, and in English we map discourse to the past tense form of the verb. You may remember that in a previous tutorial we looked at the lexicon and we looked at various forms of words. Well, I've added one form for verbs called past tense, and there's a rule that adds the suffix ed to the stem. We talked about all this in a previous tutorial. But right now, these words are just here sitting in the lexicon. We need to tell a synthesizing grammar rule to select these words under the proper circumstances. So let's go back here. We could use Grammar Wizard, but for this example, I'm going to write the rule myself. We can look here. Here's the rule that we wrote in the previous segment, which adds the indefinite article a. We want to write a rule for verbs that will select the past tense form of a verb whenever the time value is discourse. So we double click on verbs, and we need to enter a group name. Let's call it tense. Now we double click on tense, and here's an empty spellout rule. We want this to be a form selection rule. So I'll click form selection. We're going to select the past tense form whenever the time value is discourse. We need to enter a name, so let's call this rule something like select the past tense form from the lexicon whenever the time value is discourse. We should always select a topic for our rules. Let's select the tense. Okay. So there's our rule. Now if we click generate, the rules will be executed. Okay, a man walked. So that's the final surface form that we want for this particular verse, a man walked. So let's save it, and that concludes this particular segment.